Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Lori on Blog Talk Radio. It is 9 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. Wednesday night, September 21st. I'm glad to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention, and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. And it's a 30-minute live it's an hour. It's an hour tonight. I usually do a 30-minute show, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, but I sort of changed up my schedule a bit. And because I'm still off work, in between contracts, and haven't got a job yet, so I thought, well, I'll just cut back on some of my shows so I can get some other stuff done. I'm actually just finishing up a book that I should have released here pretty soon. Should be out available pretty soon, another couple of weeks or so. And just trying to take care of a few things I've been putting off for a couple of years, So yeah, it's great. I want to continue to do these shows. I was really tired today, and I kind of feel like I'm catching a cold. So hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. But I just want to do this show because it really bothers me. I was just on Facebook and just looking around on the internet to see the different headlines that are popping up around the nation, the United States and Canada mainly. And it's really disturbing, right? I mean, it's so disturbing that we can't do anything the system is in place, but it doesn't work. And we have all kinds of volunteer organizations and organizations out here who are getting millions of dollars pumped into them, to promote prevention. And you don't see too much. You see some. And I do. I know because I'm out here looking all the time. And, some of the stuff that I have seen is good, but it doesn't, it's like, tomorrow or the next day, even after these campaigns are over, we're still going to see child abuse. It doesn't, it's just not affecting, the people it needs to affect, Like the people that are interested in child abuse prevention, for instance, the people that are interested in stopping child abuse would be listening to my show. But the people that are out there abusing children are not going to listen to my show, And so I'm not here to really educate anybody on child abuse prevention. You know what I mean? I have done some of that in the last couple of years because I've been doing these shows since November 2009. So this is like 820 shows or something in, and that's a lot of shows. So I appreciate everybody who's tuning in. But mainly I just get on here and rant about the situation because I know, there's absolutely nothing we can do. Like while I'm sitting around in my apartment talking on Blog Talk Radio, people are killing their kids, And if they're killing them, they're sending them to the hospital and abuse-related injuries. And if the kid doesn't get any help, they're just going to lay in their bedroom, suffering all night or wherever they are, down in the bloody basement or the closet or somewhere. It's so sick and twisted. I grew up abused. I grew up this way. I know exactly what these kids are going through. And it drives me crazy that people would choose to hurt a child. There's no excuse for it. There's absolutely no excuse for it. I don't care. People could say, oh, it's the recession, or, oh, it was, the parents or whoever, the caregivers had substance abuse problems, or, oh, the parents, or the parent, whoever was the abusing offender, they were abused as a child or whatever. So many bloody excuses, and it's all just garbage. Just excuses. There's no excuse for child abuse, there's none. You cannot justify it. You can't say, oh, well, I had a bad day and I disciplined my child. It's like, no, it's not discipline, abuse of a child is a systematic abuse. It's systematic. It's that people are tearing their children apart. If they're not tearing them apart physically, they're tearing them apart emotionally, psychologically. And, this has absolutely got to stop. A bunch of sick and twisted people popping out kids. My parents did. And, and the sad thing is I'm the last of 7, and there would have been about 10 or 12, had some of them survived. But quite a few of the babies were stillborn. So there was 7 of us, and I'm almost thankful for that, you know what I mean? But I used to wish for death. I used to wish that I had never been born, and I used to wish that I would just die. And, I spent my whole life trying to pretty much figure a way to get out of this world, out of this pain, out of myself, you know what I mean? Out of my body, out of my skin, out of my brain, out of my mind, And this is so horrific, that people are allowed to continue to do these things to children, and even when they're brought up on charges, nothing's really done, It's like, even when there's 100%, total reliable proof, and the child's been abused or killed or murdered, these people just do a couple of years in prison and then they just walk free, and they have completely ruined that child's life or killed that child. And these stupid monsters get to go free, and that bothers me. It really does. And it's just discouraging because there's a whole lot of people out there in the world that sit there and say, well, it's just the way it is, we'll never be able to stop child abuse and, all this stuff. And it's like, well, they're kind of half right. I mean, really, they are. Because it's like, how are you going to get people to change the way they feel? How are you going to get people to not beat their child? How are you going to get people to not rape their child? How are you going to get people to not molest their child? Or burn their child, or stab their child, or kill their child and put them in a garbage bag and stuff them into some sort of a pond somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to get people to not do this? Right? It's nearly impossible. But what it's going to take is generation after generation after generation of education, and bringing and really raising awareness with these little tiny kids that are in elementary school right now, maybe even preschool, like kindergarten. And reach these little kids, right? And start them off in a mandatory program that they would not even be able to graduate high school at all without passing this program, taking every single related course to teach, healthy parent-child relationships, anti-abuse, what is abuse, coping mechanisms so that they don't abuse, anti-violence. We could change this world if we could help our kids to understand that it doesn't need to be this way. That no parent needs to beat their children, no parent needs to hurt their children, no parent needs to to psychologically damage their children, sexually use their children. That's absolutely unacceptable. And what bothers me is that we can sit and talk and talk and talk and talk, about this. I can sit and gripe and complain on all my blog talk shows. I can write books, I can do all this stuff, and so can all these other people. And it's not going to change because we don't have the necessary tools to change this. And that's to reach these young kids. We're really going to have to change the way people feel in society. And the only way to do that is to, because the parents aren't doing it. Excuse me, my voice is just terrible, but that's what I mean. I think I'm catching a bit of cold. Sorry about that. So, the issue is that, these people out here, these parents and caregivers who are raising their kids are not doing a good job, and I don't care who likes that. I really don't care. You can come and talk to me all you want, and I will talk to you and tell you a thing or two. You know what I mean? Then there are good parents out there. I know that. But see, people are thinking only in terms of their own world that they live in. So, if you live in a pretty decent neighborhood where you live in a upper scale neighborhood in a pretty good town, and there isn't a lot of violence and everybody's doing a pretty good job raising your kids, well, of course, your brain is going to be thinking that, hey, parents are good. Parents are, what's this woman saying? Parents are decent. Parents are always teaching their children the right things. That's not true. You get into some of these inner city, big city, inner city neighborhoods, you got parents that are using crack and they're doing drugs. They're not bringing their children up properly at all, Now those will be the next set of abusers, more than likely, those kids. But now the ones that are being brought up properly, they probably won't go on to abuse their children. Some may have some sort of problem with sexual abuse and may sexually abuse some children or something. But as far as physical abuse and stuff like that, not necessarily, not unless they were abused, right? But this is absolutely unacceptable because the teachers aren't going to do it. No one's going to do it. No one's going to stop this mess because the government doesn't care enough to set up a program that says, okay, every single child nationwide, this does not just include certain, certain states and certain provinces and certain cities. This is like every single school program. You know why? Because there's no money for it. There's no money for that kind of program. You can think about the money that would be involved for that kind of program would be insane. I mean, they're closing schools. They're laying off teachers. And more and more people are going to universities to take teaching, to get teaching degrees and stuff. I don't know why, because there won't be any schools by the time they get around. It's absolutely ridiculous. But it just makes me sick that it tells you where the government puts their priority. The government's priority is not on the citizens of the country, right? Otherwise, school would be a top priority, because if you actually think about it, those kids are the next people that are going to run this country. These children that are growing up, they are the next generations, and they will be the people running these countries. So it tells you, there's not a whole lot of care or thought in the process. It's like, oh, no, just bring them up, as good as you can. So So in the meantime, how many kids have to die? How many children? There's just one of the stats that I saw out there on Darkness to Light. Darkness to Light is a great website for dealing with child sexual abuse. Darkness to Light has a stat on there that says 39 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the United States alone. That's in the U.S. 39 million survivors. That's just the ones that will stand up and say, hello, I was sexually abused as a child. That's 40 million. Hello. You know what? They said it's actually more like 60. 60 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the United States alone. That's what they figured. That's another stat that I've heard. This is absolutely unacceptable. There shouldn't be one. Why are people doing this? Why are people, using children sexually for any purpose? I don't care. I don't care whether it's exploitation, or whether it's unwanted sexual touching, molestation, rape, whatever. They should not be doing it. And then you have a whole lot of society saying, oh, well, these poor pedophiles, they can't help it. And it's like, no, I don't care. Don't feel sorry for the pedo. We have to start thinking about the victim here. And we got to start thinking about the victims, right? Like the children out here that are being victimized. And, it's a crime. I hope everybody knows, child sexual abuse. And, man, I just love it when I see people get busted. But, it just makes me so angry because these kids out here, so many of them will not see justice. Like, so many of them will not ever even tell anybody that they were ever abused sexually or ever abused in any way. It's just the whole shame and the whole stigma around it. And I totally understand it. I totally get it. Because once people find out you've been abused, they really don't want to be your friend. Except for other survivors, thank God. You know what I mean? But, I have a lot of good friends. Most of them are survivors. And the rest of my friends all just split. They were like, oh, God, no thanks. I don't want to be dealing with that. It's like, well, you know what? I didn't want to deal with it either. I didn't want to be abused. I didn't like being abused by my mother and my dad. I didn't like being abused by my brother. So people don't like what I do. Well, too bad. People don't like the fact that I'm speaking out against child abuse and doing what I'm doing. I really don't care. I only got so many years left on this planet, and I figure, well, may as well do something good with them. But this just makes me so angry because, while we're sitting around on Facebook posting these posts round and around and around, reaching the same people, nothing's being done, And while these groups out here are doing these, these things, is it making a difference? Is it helping? That's my question, because I seriously don't think so, because we're not reaching the people that are abusing children. We're reaching other advocates and other people who are happy to be involved but don't know how to get involved. Even if they wanted to get involved, how are you going to get involved? It usually costs money. They usually want some sort of a fee or something to get involved. Everybody's got that kind of money, I just think that we just need to look at it more in a different way. I really do. I think it needs to be done differently. And I think it needs to be more like a campaign, like a real campaign where you go door to door. And, they say, well, you can't do that anymore, And it's so true. Like, really, if you go to the door, start talking about child abuse, somebody be punching your lights out, or, if down in the States, they just pull out their gun and start shooting at you, So what do? Sit back and just watch a whole bunch of kids die, or be abused, and then try to pick up the pieces later. And everybody knows this. And it's discouraging, because if we could just reach these stupid people out here who are hurting their children and get them to stop, we could stop child abuse, right? That's where the blame goes. I'm not blaming the system, and I'm not blaming anybody else. I'm blaming the people who are abusing the children. And that's the parents, the caregivers, the siblings, the relatives, the grandmas, aunts, uncles, cousins, the neighbors, the sick pedos out there, the sick child sexual molesters and sick people, That's who I'm blaming. They're the ones who are hurting the children. That's where the blame goes. But we as a society, we got to figure out how to fix this, because this is a freaking mess. And every day it just gets worse. And people say, well, maybe it's just because it's just more reported, or because of the internet, there's just more, knowledge about it or something. That's probably very true. And people are more apt to talk about it now, whereas before nobody wanted to talk about it. But, it's just absolutely horrific what's going on out here. And it just bothers me. It just absolutely bothers me, that there's nothing we can do. And even the police officers know that. And, they're gonna have to make calls, go to calls tonight, get calls to homes where they're going to have to, subdue the abuser and grab the child and call the social services and get them involved. It's absolutely ridiculous. All because people are too sick and twisted there's no excuse. Poverty is not an excuse. You know, a lot of times, you know, like a lot of these kids that are abused, you know, like growing up in a single parent home quite often, or, you know, sometimes there's a boyfriend or girlfriend in the picture that's abusing the child, and, you know, the, you know, financial situation may not be so good. It's no excuse to abuse a child. It's really not. There's poor people all over the world that love their children and treat them decently. So it just tells you, you know, like, there's no reason for this. It's just pure hatred. It's pure evil coming out of their hearts. I don't know how anybody can do this to children. I really don't. You know, I mean, I sit here and I look at my own situation, you know, my growing up abused, and I mean, everybody who listens to my shows knows that's what I'm talking about, you know. And it's like I think about the evil and the hatred that was in my parents' heart, you know. And then they would go off and they had their friends, they had their support, you know. And neighbors, you know, most neighbors didn't like my parents, but there was a few neighbors that actually liked them and, you know, thought they were pretty cool. Didn't care if they were busted on child abuse charges, and never bothered to get us any help, you know. Knew we were being abused, but they were all, you know, well, we like the parents, so we can't turn them in, you know. Oh well, so they beat their children and they hurt their children and they psychologically abuse their children. Oh well, and that's just too bad. So I've had to pay a lifetime of bloody hell for this because I'm trying to get over this garbage, you know. And it's hard. It's very, very hard. And the reason being is because I grew up actually a decent, normal, innocent child until my parents got a hold of me. So for about maybe 2 hours after I was born, you know, it all started, and I was just turned into what I am today, you know. And that's, you know, it's hard. It's very, very hard, you know, to keep love in your heart, and that's what I'm working on now, because I am, you know, a long way through my healing journey. But the thing is that I'm not in denial, and I'm not one of these people to be like, oh, I'm healed, I feel great, I can just ignore all this now. It's like, no, you know, like I can't do the DID thing. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in reality. I'm just realistic. I'm just here in the now, and I know what happened to me as a child, so, you know, I'm a bit bitter about it. You know what I mean? I'm just a bit bitter. And bitter is good, because we need to be bitter about child abuse, right? Around singing songs, and, you know, it's just ridiculous to just ignore this stuff. And that's what so many people will do, because they don't want to face the pain of it. You know, nobody wants to look at the actual pain that these kids are going through. So it's better if we just sit around and sing little pretty songs and, you know, oh, stop child abuse. It's like, no, this is absolutely so sick and twisted, you know. We can't talk about it any other way than to talk about it bitterly and with a little bit of salt, you know, because these kids' lives matter, they do count, and this is not a joke, you know. But so many people make child abuse prevention into a joke, you know, and try to make it all pretty and sugarcoat it and stuff so the public will buy into it. And it's like, I don't care if the public buys into what I'm talking about or not, because I'm not shutting up. You know, it's like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, no child should ever be abused in any way, and yet how many will die tonight because of abuse? How many little precious little babies will be killed, you know, murdered, sexually abused, you know, raped and abused, and they will die because of the child abuse related injuries, or just be murdered flat out. Like, this is absolutely horrific. I grew up with kids who were abused in every way. I was not the only one abused in my neighborhood. You know, I mean, I grew up, I knew a young guy growing up whose dad stabbed him in the back, and it sliced his kidney. And when he was a little kid, he was 7 years old when his dad stabbed him in the back. I mean, how could you stab your child in the back? Like, how could you even stab your child? How could you even pick up a knife to hold it up to your child? How could you even have that in your heart to do that, you know? It's sort of the same thing with my mom taking a rolling pin to my head, cracking my head open, and then throwing me out of the house and spitting on me and calling me names and kicking my ass, you know? That's the same kind of stuff, right? It's that whole, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to annihilate you, I'm going to delete you off the earth, you know? And, you know, that's not right, you know? It's just not right. And there's nothing right about it. And, you know, if we don't start speaking about this, you know, honestly and truthfully, you know, and instead of sugarcoating it and trying to make it seem like it's okay. I mean, survivors are quite often doing that. Oh, it's okay, I'm all right. You know, it's like, yeah, okay. You know what I mean? Like, sure, all right. You know, we really have to be honest about child abuse. It's horrific, and it's horrible, and it kills. It's completely deadly. And if we don't do something to stop this, we're just going to keep losing children and keep losing children, more and more children all the time, you know. And to me, their lives are worth standing up and getting a little bit pissed off about. You know what I mean? Because this just makes me angry that people do this stuff. And what are we going to do? We got, what I think would be really cool is what they should do is all these people that are hooked up on the different child abuse. Because, I'm on Facebook, and, I'm not hooked up with all of the advocates because, it's a little bit hard to be doing that. But I'm hooked up with a lot of advocates out here, well-known advocates to stop child abuse prevention advocates, right? And it's great, and other forms of abuse too, domestic violence and stuff. It's wonderful, sexual assault and different things like this. And the thing is what would be really cool is if the government would pay all of us to get together, not for 2 days, but for a period of 6 months, and come up with something that's going to work. Because we are the people that care about this. You know what I mean? Like, we are the people that spend night after night after night posting these damn posts and talking on these damn shows, And we are the ones who go into bed at night thinking about these kids, you know what I mean? And thinking, how are we going to save these kids, like, oh my God. Like, I like to think about the worldwide issues, but right now I'm just talking about the United States and Canada. Like, this is, to me, there's something needs to be done. And I just think it just needs to be done, like, now. And I just think that we just need, the government really needs to support this. And, there's a whole lot of money being pumped in to organizations that are not making a difference. They're not doing what they should be doing. They're just not doing anything, right? And it's just like you sit there and you just wonder, like, what are they using their $2.4 billion for? You know what I mean? Like, what, you never hear from them, like once in a while you do, but it's very rare. Most of the stuff is just really rather unknown. And there's a whole lot of people out here that are getting funding, but they're not doing anything with it. So what are we supposed to do with that? That's just garbage. And it's the same with the government, with all these programs, social services, DHS, the CPS, and all this stuff. I'm not running those people down, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit here and run them down. I'm all pro-government. The issue is that the system doesn't work. So fix it, Well, people say, well, it's too large. It's actually not that. That's not the case. It would just cost money because they'd have to hire some more people. Because they don't have the time. They don't even have the time to train properly. That's why kids slip through the cracks, on those phone calls, on the reports being made, because the people aren't trained properly. And the issue is that even if they are, sometimes they just don't care. So there should never be a one call. It should always be passed to maybe 2 or 3 people. Like, I don't think it should, that one, like, if I phoned in a report of child abuse and I phoned it in and I talked to one person, and that one person for whatever reason was spaced out that day and just thought, nah, we're not going to investigate, and then that child dies, why should it just be left up to one person on the phone? You know what I mean? It should be passed to at least 2 or 3 different people, right? Not even 2, but more like 3. 3, if not 4. And that would be frustrating for the person who was reporting. But maybe what they could do is just record the call, because that's what they should do anyway. Record the call, send it through a line of people so that they can all, veto the first person's judgment, the first person's call. Because if the first person says, well, no, I don't think we should investigate, but 2 or 3 people listen to it within the next 5 minutes and say, no, yes, this is absolutely, we do need to investigate this, absolutely. And you know what I think? They should just investigate them all. But you know what? It costs money. Right? This is the whole issue. Kids are dying because of money. Right? Now, this just pisses me off. I don't have any freaking money. I got $10 in my freaking bank account. But you know what? I donate to things, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting here just trying to hoard all my money. Like, I don't have any freaking money. I'm like $30,000 in debt. But yeah, I'm paying to do this damn blog talk show so I can get my voice out here so that people will at least wake up, and even if I just piss everybody off, at least it will make somebody feel something about this. Because this just makes me sick. The government is like, you know what? They just shows you they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. That's why they're not working on trying to fix the system. They're not trying to work on anything. They're just laying off more social workers. I see ads in the paper for social workers. You want to know what they pay? It's so ridiculous what they pay. You can't even make a living on that. And you know what the hours are? Like 9 hours a week. How are you supposed to make a living on 9 hours a week? Who wants to be a social worker? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of a person would be able to even be able to go to university to get a social services social worker degree to go out and make $10 an hour and work 9 hours a week. You gotta freaking kidding me. And this is the situation. This is what we have out here. And you know why? Because the programs and the funding is not there. And so they can't afford to pay these people any money. So what they do is they just let them work 9 hours a week, and they pay them $10 an hour. That tells you that this system is so screwed up. It's not even funny. You know what though? They'll pay psychiatrists and psychologists and other people to work with these abused kids after they've been abused. There's a whole lot of money being made in that. So it's like, okay, yeah, let's just let all kids be raped and sodomized and sexually used, and let the parents beat the shit out of them and practically kill them and psychologically abuse them for a good 15 years of their life. And then after they're totally trashed and wasted individuals, just wanting to die, we'll try to pick up the pieces then. It just makes me so angry. As you can tell, I'm a survivor and I'm pissed off. But it just bothers me. Because it's just like, why are we letting these kids be abused in the first place? Why not get involved and change this and get the education going in the schools? Every school system, every child attends programs all the way through to high school, and they cannot graduate until they pass those classes, and they will have to go out into the world. And when they have their kids, so let's say in about 20 years, let's just give these kids, if they're maybe even less than that, how about let's even say 17 years or 16 years, these kids that are like third grade or whatever, they're going to go out and start families. So in the next 17 years, if we could have programs set up like starting next year, you know what I mean, where they had to go through these programs, every single student, by the time they have their kids, they're going to have a whole background of knowledge on how to handle these situations. And it's not okay to sexually use a child. And it's not okay to rape a child. It's not okay to beat a child's head in with a rolling pin. And it's not okay to beat on your children with belts and break the skin and rip their skin up and cause them all kinds of emotional distress and anxiety problems and psychological problems. It's not okay to curse at them and call them names and spit in their face and throw them out of the house. And it's just not okay to do any of those things. It's not okay to throw them down to the basement and lock them up and not feed them and not take care of them. They would have to learn all about it. And, it'd be a real eye-opener for them, because obviously the parents aren't teaching them. Nobody's teaching them, And by the time they graduate and have their children, maybe we could have a decent set of parents out here. That'd be like the first generation that would actually do something about this and actually not abuse children. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, I'd sure like to think that would be possible, but there would always be dropouts and stuff that wouldn't go through the program that would abuse children. But there would be there'd be some that would pass the course that would still abuse their children. The issue is that I think that it would be less. I really do. I think the numbers would come down, because if people realize that there was ways to cope, that they don't have to lash out and slap their kids around, they don't have to burn their children or hurt their children or poison their children or try to sexually use their children, that there's help out there for people with these issues. You know what I mean? It's just so twisted. You know what I mean? Like, why can't people make the right choice when it comes to a child? Like, to me, it's just so simple. You don't hurt a child. You just don't. Like, why is this such an issue? People act like it's freaking rocket science. Like, this is bloody or brain surgery. Like, this is so easy. Just stop hurting children. Like, what is so freaking hard about that? Like, I will never, ever understand this stuff. Never. I don't care what the issues are. I really don't. Because I grew up abused. My parents had every excuse in the world. Of course, they never took any responsibility. Oh, it was your father's fault. It was all his fault. That was my mother. My dad was, it was the devil. It was the 1960s. It was 1970s. It was the 1980s. It was the 1990s. It's like, Jesus. Just take some freaking responsibility for what you did to your children and your wife, And it's like, no, they don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, I was abused as a child. We didn't know any better. That's a real good one. That's what my parents like to say. We didn't know any better. They were brought up on charges. My parents had to go to court because they were brought up on child abuse charges. They didn't do any time, And we were left in the home. Isn't that dandy? But that's the late 1960s for you. So, the issue is like what a piss off that people would choose to do this to their children. That's why I write books, and that's why I wrote a truthful account. Actually, all of my books are so far are truthful accounts of what happened to me as a child. A Life of Death and Redemption and La Vida Juvis, and the next one coming up is a book that I should have out here in the next couple of weeks, right? And this is all very 100% truth. And I want people to know what people do to children behind closed doors. I want people to know what people say to children behind closed doors. People know. People know. They know that just by reading my story, they would know, because they know that probably somewhere in their lifetime, one of their parents or somebody in their family said the same damn thing to them. And it hurts. And it's not right. Or somebody who treated their child just the same way I was treated, beaten and burned and abused and just trashed, And I know that there's so many people out there who were sexually used and raped and sodomized, so there you go. I mean, I'm not alone in that. But I mean, this is absolutely horrific, and I plan on doing as much public speaking as I can, you know what I mean? But this last couple of years I was volunteering with Dream Catchers for Abused Children. That was awesome. And I just left them for personal reasons, and so I'm just moving on, But the thing is that I, like this last couple of years was mainly stuff online. It was all online stuff, reaching the same people, like the same people that actually are advocates. So basically, we're just preaching to the choir. We're not able to really help anybody because we're just preaching to the choir. It's like we need to get out into the public. We need to be allowed to. See, that's the problem. Even in Canada, you can't just walk down the street and pass out flyers. You actually have to have a permit to do that. You can't just walk out and pass. You can't just be on the street, walking down the street and pass out flyers. It's illegal, right? You can't even pass out business cards. Like, you're not allowed to approach people with that kind of stuff at all. You have to have a permit. So, now I don't know about the States, but I know that's how it is up here. And so you never see anything up here. It's all in the way because nobody's allowed to see it. Because we live in a world where there is no such thing as child abuse. And child sexual abuse, what's that? I mean, we have Little Warriors up here in Edmonton, right on. Little Warriors, I love them. Little Warriors, check out their website. Great information on child sexual abuse. They are really doing it. They're a grassroots organization that has, not-for-profit, that has done what they needed to do. And that is to get out into the public, which is great, because it's not easy to do. And they've actually managed to do it. And I give them a lot of credit, because they're kind of Canada-wide now, not just only in Alberta where I'm at. Like, they've really kind of branched, and they've made a difference. Like, they're in Manitoba, they're kind of spreading across, and it's great to see that, because you don't see too much of that. There's not very many great things being done, right, where these people are really doing a great job, because what they do is they have they do a lot of stuff like the Stewards of Children with Darkness to Light, educating teachers and people that work with children, to understand the whole issue surrounding child sexual abuse, right? So the same thing, same type of program. And the Stewards of Children, Darkness to Light Steward of Children are up here as well in Alberta, and they're around everywhere. So I mean, they do some great work, but you never see flyers or posters. You never see anything where somebody who would, let's say, somebody's on their way home from work and they've been beating on their child, or they've been sexually using their child. And this person's driving down the street, and this is their history. This is what they do to their children when they go home, and they're on their way home. If they saw, somewhere like a billboard or some sort of an advertisement that said, "Don't hurt your children. There are ways to cope. You don't have to hurt your children. You don't have to sexually use your children. You don't have to beat your children," or what I mean. This kind of stuff. It might make them to think about that. But when they get home, that they shouldn't be beating on their children. That they shouldn't be sexually abusing their children, but you're never going to see that, because nobody wants to see it. Nobody even wants to know about it. So you never see hardly anything on stopping child abuse. Nothing, because it's not allowed. Because we can't have that. That would mean we have a problem. It's like if we have billboards around that say stop child abuse, that means we have a problem. That means there is child abuse. Oh well, we can't have that. We don't want to offend anybody. It's like I tell you, I was mighty offended when my brother raped me. I tell you that. Mighty offended. And I am mighty offended now. I've been mighty offended my whole life that my mother did what she did to me. Just abusive in every way. I'm offended, absolutely offended. And I would say if somebody isn't offended at what my parents did to me, there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just me. There was 7 siblings involved. It was 6. I was the last of 7. So 6 of my siblings had to go through pretty well the same exact crap that I did, minus the sexual abuse. So, I'm offended. Absolutely, I'm offended that this was allowed to go on. And I'm offended at a nation and a society of people that don't care. So I want to talk about somebody being offended. I'm the one who's offended. I'm tired of these people being offended. Well, we don't want to know about child abuse. It just offends me. It's like you offend me by not wanting to know about the truth and the reality of what is actually happening to children right now as I'm speaking right now. That's offensive to me. I get so tired of people with their just don't want to see, no monkey, no see, no hear, no do attitude. What I don't have to see, I don't have to know about. Just that's what happens in families with child abuse, especially child sexual abuse. It's like, oh well, if we don't know about it, then we can just go ahead and just ignore it, and we won't have to deal with it. And the child can just be sexually abused and won't matter to us because we're not dealing with it. That's so many families' attitudes. You bet it is. Almost all. Hardly ever will anybody get their child any help in a child sexual abuse situation. Because of the stigma surrounding it, because they don't want to go to court, and they don't want to have to go to court. And if it's the father or if it's the mother, because, hey, mothers sexually abuse their children, believe it or not, then, they'll have to get dragged into court on this thing, and they don't want to do that because it'll mess with the finances. Who's going to pay for the house and the bills, right? So the bills and the house and all that shit comes before the child's body. It's like, oh, no, well, too bad if little Susie's raped, too bad. In my case, it was just that my mother didn't want to deal with it. She was being sexually abused by my dad, so she was like, hey, well, if your brother's raping you and sodomizing you, too bloody bad. I'm being sexually abused, so you can be too. Too bad. That was her attitude. So, it just makes me so sick to my stomach that people don't get children help when they should. And then there's all these people that try to prove that the case is wrong, because there's a lot of support for these people that are out here abusing children. They have top-notch, defenders who will actually, get them off and say, by some sort of, using some sort of method so that they're not found guilty. And it just makes me so mad because it's like these little kids, they don't deserve this, They weren't put on the earth to abuse and to kick around and sexually use. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. What I think that we should be allowed to do, honest to God, come down on these people a lot harsher. Like the government, needs to, the lawmakers and the penalties need to be harsher. People that are caught, like somebody who abuses a child. I mean, I know it's wrong to say, okay, eye for an eye, sort of thing. Like, well, you kill a child, you should just be killed or whatever. But I kind of agree with that. But, I mean, in some sense, I don't want to see that because so many people would just be killed and they wouldn't suffer, What I think we should do is just take them all out to some sort of a penal colony somewhere where they never, ever get out. And they just have to live their life in this place that's just really bad. You know what I mean? And too bad, because that's what they used to do in the old days, and that's really, that seems to work. If people think that they're going to be shipped off somewhere and they're never, ever going to get out, and it's going to be a really bad place, like a mine or a place where they're going to have to work. And I don't care about humane conditions for people that kill children. I really don't. See, that's the whole issue. We got confused on the issue. You know what I mean? Like, I'm all for human rights. Like, I'm a total human rights person who believes in protecting human rights. The issue is that when you take a life or you abuse a child in any way and you're found 100% guilty, you no longer have the same rights that you once enjoyed. Why should you? You took a life. And if you didn't kill the child and they didn't kill that child, then they certainly did take their life because they will be dead for the rest of their life like me. Just a walking shell waiting to end this, waiting to be out of this damn mess. You know what I mean? Because I can't close this shit off. Excuse my language, but I am a little cranky tonight. But I can't close this stuff off. I can't just pretend. The thing I could do is just do a whole bunch of drugs and just forget about it. I don't want to do that. I would like to live my life drug-free. So now I'm cranky, right? Because I've been off the drugs since I was 21. So I've had to go through all the rest of my time here being very, very cranky about what happened to me as a child. Because I can't go back and get it. I can't get the love I needed. I can't get the care that I did. I can't go back and undo the damage from being raped and sodomized as a child. I can't go back and change that. So I'm stuck and forced to live with it, and accept it for what it is, you know. So I think that we should take all of these abusers out here and put them someplace, some desert place where there's just nothing, and let them live out the rest of their days there. They never, ever, ever get to have any modern conveniences ever again. And they just will be forced to live like animals. Because you know what? That's what they deserve. They don't deserve to be treated with cushy little, oh, we'll just get you a TV for your cell and you'll be out in a couple of years, no problem. And you can even go get a university degree while you're in here. And we'll fix your teeth and we'll do all this stuff. We'll fix you up. Then you can go back out and you'll probably pop out a couple more kids, kill them too. And then you'll cost the system another couple, at least a couple mil. But that's okay. No problem. See, like we've got this whole thing all screwed up. You know what I mean? We're paying more attention and caring more about the damn perpetrators of these crimes than we are these children who are in these body bags right now. Little children in these morgues, in these body bags, beaten and tortured and maimed and just trashed. And this makes me so incredibly sick. That people would care more for these damn pedophiles and child abusers than they do for the children. Somebody doesn't mind seeing a picture of a pedophile on the TV or on the internet, but they don't want to see no pictures of abused children. That just pisses me off. It's like, what? So we can hero worship the pedo? You know what I mean? That just tells me that people's hearts are not in the right place. And it tells me that there's a whole lot of ignorant people out there. Well, I know that. My parents were ignorant. You know what I mean? You can't abuse a child like that and expect that you're not ignorant. There's a whole lot of ignorant people out there in the world, obviously. And it just makes me sick. You know what I mean? Like, we really have to figure out what we're doing. And I think as a whole, what I really wish people would do is lobby for tougher sentencing. You know what I mean? And also just get involved locally. Like, you can get involved nationally all you want, but there isn't much you can do. Locally, you might be able to make a difference. You know what I mean? Because people, the more the government sees that there's more people within each city that wants to get involved and do something about this, the more chances for change there will be. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm doing right now. It's just trying to work locally, getting locally hooked up and speaking locally, and just getting involved locally. So, but the thing is nationally, I mean, some of the stuff is great, and some of it's necessary. And I'm talking about prevention. I'm not talking about adult survivor stuff. I mean, I do all my adult survivor stuff nationally because you're going to reach a lot more people that way. And that's basically what you have to do. But I'm also doing local survivor stuff too. But the thing is like, as far as the prevention stuff goes, there's some good stuff. I saw an article out here, and this is from www.prnewschannel.com, and it says Child Abuse Prevention Volunteers launch national campaign, and this was just from the 19th of September, so it was just posted like a couple days ago from Scottsdale, Arizona. It says with nearly 7 children dying each day, the epidemic of child abuse and neglect is on the rise in the U.S. Child Help, a leading national nonprofit dedicated to the prevention and treatment of child abuse, operates the Child Help National Center Child Abuse Hotline, providing hope and help to those in need. Sadly, many children who are suffering abuse are not even aware that the hotline exists. So Child Help Wings, a volunteer program, launched an aggressive national campaign recently aimed at putting the hotline number in front of as many children in America as possible. That's awesome. Wings members have received permission to place the hotline posters in several school districts and are placing the posters everywhere that a child might see it. And Child Help Wings is simply a movement of people who understand that each of us doing a little can collectively add up to a lot, said Lisa Evans, Child Help Wings coordinator. Putting up a poster may not seem like much, but for the child who needs to know that the number exists, it can mean everything. And that's so true. That's 1-800-4-CHILD, just in case people don't know that. Child Help, 1-800-4-8-CHILD. The number 4, the letter A, child. So that's 1-800-422-4453. That's Child Help's Child Abuse, National Child Abuse Hotline, right? And so, that's great, man. I just love this, and I love to see this. And, this is the thing. It just needs to be out where people can see the stuff, you know what I mean? Because a lot of these people and these children, they're not going to see this information. They're not going to know, you know what I mean? And that this is serious, and there are phone numbers you can call if you're being abused, and not that you will get help, but at least it's an opportunity and a chance to get some help, because we already know that so many children do slip through the cracks, you know what I mean? Like, my God, we did, and that was even after the intervention was done. For God's sakes, people do. We're just one more case. I don't know why people wouldn't buy into that. The issue is so many children are. There'll be 20, 30 interventions done for children, where CPS or DHS goes in, monitors the child, checks on the child, and after 20 or 30 visits, the child is still killed within the home. We were left in the home too. My mom pleaded the courts and told the courts, well, she actually begged the courts, don't take my children, don't take my children, they're all I have, and we'll do a better job and all this. And it was all their father, and then the older siblings all said, no, it was our mother too. And the court said, well, okay, you guys have to go first of all, they had to get psych tests done, and both parents were thought to be mentally ill. And they had to go to counseling, marital counseling, anger management courses, and they were told to get family counseling as well. And all the children were supposed to have individual counseling on their own, right? Well, my parents went to 2 counseling sessions, and that was it. But that was 1968, so, there wasn't anything done about stuff back then in those days, right? So, there wasn't really anything done until the 90s. So that just tells you. There still isn't being anything done. Kids are still being left in homes, right? It's like, well, because what are you going to do? We can't remove all the kids. People are pretty well abusing all their kids. Did you know the stats and the facts are, and no, this is so true, and the reason that I do is because people don't make this garbage up. 1 in 3 or 4 girls, 1 in 6 to 7 boys, even the number's even lower than, higher than that now. It's like 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 4 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. That's the stats, that's the facts, and that's the reality. And I knew so many kids growing up who were sexually abused as children. And now I know so many people, adults, who have been sexually abused as children, and I'm one. So if you know me, then you know another one. This is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, my God. This means everybody's abusing children pretty well. That's what that means. You know what I mean? And this has got to stop. This absolutely has to stop. Make as much noise as you can. Get involved, wherever you can. I mean, really. But just do something. Because we can't sit back and just say it's no big deal. So many people do sit back and say, well, it doesn't bother me, it wasn't me, and it's not my problem, And that's understandable, it's really not. But the issue is that, people say, well, it doesn't affect me. Well, it does. It affects everything. It affects your it affects your pocketbook with the taxes. You bet it does. It affects a lot of stuff. Now, that money would be used for something else, even if we had stopped child abuse and domestic violence and all this other stuff. And all the billions, the trillions of dollars that are being pumped out because of it, and the taxpayer dollars, then that money would just be used for something else. It's not like you would see it in your pocket. The government would just take it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, it's not like they're going to give you a rebate. They're not going to say, okay, well, there's no more child abuse or domestic violence. Give back the trillions that we picked up this year. That wouldn't happen. But the issue is that we would have a whole lot less crime. Because kids wouldn't be on the streets. Why are kids on the streets? Kids shouldn't be on the streets. People say, oh, well, they just went away because they didn't like the rules. They didn't like the rules of the house. They probably didn't like to have dad's fist in their face every other night, or mom screaming and cursing at them or sexually using them, or somebody raping them at night. That's probably why they left the house. There's quite a few runaways, actually. There will always be some that run away because they don't like the rules of the house. Now, that's a fact. But the majority are on the run because they can't live at home. You know what I mean? And they feel, for whatever reason, that their life is more at risk living at home than it is on the streets. There's a whole lot of that. And I just get so tired of people saying stupid remarks like, look at those young punks on the streets. They should just go home. It's like, well, maybe they're safer on the street. You know what I mean? Honestly, I would have been safer on the street. Even though, people would say, well, is that really true? Because I was almost kidnapped 5 times when I was young, because I was always out on the streets. But the thing is there were plenty of nights where I would have been safer outside on the street, sleeping behind a bush somewhere. So people, you got to just wake up and smell the coffee. This is reality. I know where these kids are coming from. I plan on writing a lot more books. I plan on doing a whole lot more work, and I really hope that that my work that I do actually does make a difference. You know what I mean? That's my goal anyway. And because I've been there, I've seen this, and I saw some stuff that I had friends who were in so much worse situations than me, and I grew up abused, sexually abused and abused in every way, and I actually had friends who were more abused than I was, and I used to feel bad for them. You know what I mean? I knew where I came from, and I was like, oh my God, to come from where they come from. That's even just the worst, you know what I mean? And so, I know where these kids are coming from, you know. And I mean, I knew all kinds of kids who were, in the foster care system or were abused in their foster homes. I knew kids who were on the street. I knew kids who were abused like myself by their parents. I knew kids who were molested and raped by their grandparents. I knew a girl who was raped by her brother, like me. I mean, I knew kids who were abused. I knew a girl whose father was raping her. And when you grow up around a whole lot of abuse and abused kids, you don't make a phone call. Nobody makes a phone call. You know what I mean? None of us would have made a phone call for each other, right? Because that was life for us. And so that's what I want to paint a real big, clear picture for people. Is that quite often they will not, abused children won't get help because they won't make a phone call because they that's their life. That's the life they live. And if it's the life of their friends and their other people that they know, and there's no one saying, "Oh, let's get some help. We got to get you some help." You just deal with it. A lot of my friends were living on the streets, living in their cars, especially as young teens. If they had a car and whatnot. Just things like this. But the abuse was rampant. And so, that's why I kind of want to continue to write books and, make as much noise as I can. And not just about my personal story, but also just writing books about this issue, you know what I mean, this whole nationwide national issue. But so this is really cool. Child Help's doing this really awesome thing. And there's also another really great thing coming up. That's Talkathon. It's Talk, TAALK. And it's breaking the silence that surrounds child sexual abuse. And it's www.taalk.org, and they're doing a second talkathon. They did a first one. It was very popular. It really went well, and a lot of people listened to it. A lot of people got a lot of great information out of it. They're doing another one, and I've actually been invited to be one of the guest speakers on there, and I'll be on November the 19th at 10 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time, along with Ray Luskin, and there's another fellow that'll be joining us. But there's so many of us, you know what I mean? I'm just one time slot. There's going to be time slot after time slot, hour after hour. It's I believe it's a 24-hour or 48-hour, something like that, talkathon about child sexual abuse, right? And that's a great thing. That's coming up. And talkathon is, they're kind of also sort of involved with, the stewards of children and, all these people. They all kind of work together, right? And a lot of them, not all of them. But some of them do. And, it's awesome. Get involved where you can. You know what I mean? There are things going on. Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, I'm not with them anymore, but I still love their mission. I love what they do. And I'll always love what they do. I love what they stand for. And I love what they're trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? Which is to promote education and awareness regarding child abuse and the issues that surround child abuse and child abuse prevention. So I will always love the mission and was proud to be a part of it. You know what I mean? It was awesome. And it was a good year and a half, and so it's good. I'm also one of the facilitators for Lamplighters. So Lamplighters is another great organization for child sexual abuse. That's Marjorie McKinnon. Lamplighters. If you just type into your browser the Lamplighters, it'll bring up the preventing child sexual abuse, and it's really what it is. It's support system for people who have been abused sexually or, been victims of sexual abuse, right, as children or even domestic violence and sexual assault, right? And so there's all kinds of facilitators worldwide. And there's, groups and facilitators worldwide, so you can check that out. And so, it's like support groups, right? And they're free. You don't have to pay any money or anything like that. So I just opened up a chapter up here in Calgary, so that's really cool. And I'm just kind of getting going on it because I've had way too much to catch up on. Leaving Dreamcatchers, and I had a couple of years worth of stuff I put off 2 years worth of stuff because I was so busy. So now I'm just trying to kind of catch up on things, including trying to get a job, you know what I mean? And I write, and I've been doing all this other stuff too, so I've been incredibly busy. But that's a great organization, Lamplighters, and it's 501, not for profit, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything to join these support groups. And you can check, excuse me, if you go on their website, you can check and see that they do have a map, and they show where all the people are that are actually facilitating those groups, and you can actually contact Marjorie, and if you'd like to, be involved, and she'll sort of, let you know who to contact and who to get in touch with. So there are some great groups out here doing some wonderful things. It's just a matter of just finding the time, really, to get involved, right? Because I know how that goes. Time is a huge issue, and for most people, and sometimes, we just don't have the funds to donate. We just don't have the time to get involved. But I would say just make sure that that you're looking out for the kids in your own life, to make sure that they're not being abused. Make sure that they're not suffering and being abused, and just make sure that you do report it. If you know a child's being abused, do the right thing and get the child some help. People say, well, even if I report it, the child's not going to get any help. Yeah, but it's better to try to save that child's life than not. And especially if it's life-threatening and you know that child's being beaten or abused, and you think, oh my God, they're going to kill that child, you need to do the right thing, and you need to make a phone call, because every child has the right to live. Every child has the right to life, Like I study human rights and child rights, and children's rights. They do exist, but they only exist if we uphold them. It's the same as human rights. They only exist if we actually stand up for them. And so, make sure that, you're looking out for the kids in your own world and in your own life, So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. And I'll be back on tomorrow morning at same time, same place as I'm usually at in the morning, 6 o'clock a.m., for One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And we'll be looking at Robert Burney's webpage, just looking at the inner child healing process and whatnot. And that'll be for an hour, too, so I sort of changed my shows up a bit. And so that'll be for 1 hour tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 6 o'clock a.m., early, bright and early. So thanks, everybody, for being here with me tonight. I really appreciate it. I know I have a lot of people listening to my shows. I almost have 40,000 shows listened to. That's a lot of shows. And I know sometimes, there's like 10, 15 people listening live, and I don't see you in the chat room, and I don't know who you are, but I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say. And, listening to me go on and rant for 2 years about child abuse. Thank you very much for being a part of this with me. And, I appreciate your time. And I appreciate what you're doing, because I know that a lot of you are my friends out here who are advocating to stop child abuse, right? So thanks very much for everything, and have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.